For the,
Right?
can you hear me now? Oh, now you can hear me. So let me say it again. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Greater Miami Expressway Agency Board meeting. I would like to call our meeting to order at 9 a.m. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. As board chair, I want to thank everyone for being here this morning. And I also want to thank our dedicated staff and contractors for their dedication over the last 48 hours addressing impacts from the heavy rains to the facility. Mr. Alston has kept all members of the board updated on the impact and overall progress, and we support restoring and hardening our facility to withstand future events. This room here, even this morning, had blowers in this room. We got a lot of damage in the last 48 hours, so kudos again to everyone that made our meeting possible today. Now I'm going to ask our corporate board secretary to conduct a roll call of board members.
Good morning. Chair Cancio,
Present.
Vice Chair Fatima Perez, Vice Chair Rodolfo Pages, Treasurer Rodolfo Pages,
Present.
Secretary Richard Blanco,
Present.
Secretary Miller.
Present.
We have full quorum.
So next, we have declaration of voting conflicts. Board members, at this time, please advise if you have any conflicts based on the items on the consent agenda or regular agenda. I would like to advise that I have a conflict with one of the items in the consent agenda that I'm going to have to pull from the consent agenda. And I will not be able to vote on the, let's see. This one here. On item number 2 on the procurement contract. Does anyone else have any conflicts?
I as well have a conflict with item number 2 on the agenda.
Okay, so we will pull item number 2 from the consent agenda. Let's move to our public comment period. If you wish to address the board today on any topic, you will be given 3 minutes to speak. And I will recognize Mr. Alston to identify those who have signed up to speak. Mr. Alston, you're recognized.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. No one has signed up to speak. However, if a member of the public wishes to address the board, you may do so at this time. If there's a member of the public that wishes to address the board, you may do so at this time. Is there a member that wishes to address the board? Hearing none, seeing none, back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next is approval of our meeting minutes from September 27, 2023 meeting. Board members, you've had an opportunity to review the minutes. Is there any discussion or is there a motion for approval?
Motion for approval.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Let's vote on the item. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Hearing no nays, the motion passes. And now we're on to the consent agenda, and I will ask our acting general counsel, Rafael Garcia, to read the consent items into the record. Rafael?
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. The administrative items for today are number 1, travel approval from February 11th through February 16th, 2024 to Washington, D.C. by Interim Executive Director Tori Alston to attend the International Bridge, Tunnel, and Turnpike Association Leadership Academy, IBTTA, Executive Development Program. Number 2 on that list is the GMX procurement contract number RFP-22-01, approval of supplemental agreement with Haley Engineering Contractors, Inc. in the amount of $4,987,168 for design-build services for State Route 836, new Homestead extension of Florida's Turnpike Heft ramp connections. And number 3 would be the 2024 Governing Board meeting dates. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. So, board members, you've heard the consent agenda, and I think we agree that we have to pull item number 2 from the agenda. Any other comments? So we're going to vote on,
So just to confirm, we're voting on 1 and 3.
we're voting on 1 and 3.
Perfect, okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yes, so calling a vote on the items still in the consent agenda, 1 and 3. Is there a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
Motion?
Second.
Any discussion? So we're voting on items 1 and 3. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Now we will address the items pulled for discussion from the consent agenda. So I will pass it to Vice Chair Perez.
I recognize Mr. Alston to introduce the item.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board. The item is GMX procurement contract number RFP 22-01, approval of the supplemental agreement with Haley Engineering Contractors in the amount as stated from council. That is the item before you.
Is there a motion for approval of the item?
Comments?
Sure, go ahead.
This is an item that the county still owes us the funds, is that correct?
Through the vice chair, yes. So this is one of several items, and I know just for board members, I know we've had conversations around 1 or 2 items that we're still having conversations with the county. This is one of them. I've actually already I've queued up the director of engineering on this item as well. I will share to your point, board member Pages. We've had conversation just a few days ago with the county's director of transportation on this item and several other items, and we're hoping that the county will have come to the table on moving forward.
What's the total of all the items, Tori?
So I know this item, along with the 8.2 million item, I think those are the 2 items that we're still under consideration, waiting to hear back from the county.
No, these are services already rendered, correct?
Yes. So I'm going to have actually, I'll let Juan. You want to comment on this item?
Yes, so the work associated with this supplemental agreement has started. It's part of the ongoing construction with the 836 and the new connections with the Turnpike, where 836 will be connecting. This contract was entered into with Haley Engineering in early 22, right? So early 22 is when we started the construction, and then all these changes came about. In order to not create further delays and further cost impacts, we proceeded with the work associated with the $5 million essay. As I briefed Executive Director Alston earlier, the impacts of not doing this work now would be 2 or 3 times the effort moving forward. So we wanted to make sure that we not only save money, but that we don't impact the public once we open up a new ramp connection between 2 major expressways. We do have an executed term sheet with the county on all the ongoing agreements, including this one. Since this work is associated with a development with the existing Dolphin Park and Ride, the developers there have required impact fees that they have to pay through the county, and we're going to be reimbursed through those impact fees when those get paid. So right now, the term sheet shows that we would get paid no later than July of 24, as according to the term sheet. But that also has to go through the commission, through the county commission committees, and ultimately through the Board of County Commission for approval. We also have, as part of the development, in order to put some guarantees, their zoning requirements requires the developers to pay the impact fees associated with this work, and the county is, and there's verbiage there where the county is going to be reimbursing the agency for that through those impact fees. So there's language in the zoning for that development that ties this payment to the agency as well.
And since when have you been trying to collect on this payment?
Well, as I mentioned, we've been working on this agreement for several months. The term sheet is clear on this particular payment that we won't receive payment until as early as April of '24, as late as July. So because that is tied to the impact fee that they're going to be receiving. And the other payment, the 8.2, we've been working with them around the same time frame. And that is right now, the item for the Board of County Commissioners has been drafted. It's prepared. It just needs to run through their committee process and ultimately go to the commission for approval.
Okay, go ahead.
Follow-up question?
Go ahead.
The 8.2 is associated with what?
The 8.2 is associated with the actual construction of the park and ride that was opened in '21. And that's the county reimbursing the agency for the work that went beyond the original agreement for that development. So basically, the cost of the park and ride was in total $16.5 million. There was a three-party agreement between the DOT, the county, and the agency to fund and construct, where the DOT had provided $5 million for planning, design, and some construction. The county had put up about $10 million for the same efforts and to begin the construction. And that was originally going to cover the cost, but all the overruns, everything that went beyond because of things that added, the original agreement said that the county would be responsible for any additional costs. This is basically to cover and make the agency whole on what the actual cost of the park and ride was.
I've continued follow-up. if
Go
that's
ahead,
all right.
follow up.
All right. And I appreciate that we've been working for 2 years to get some resolution. I'm not sure how those contracts were originally written and the terms of those contracts. I would refer to them as joint participation agreements. I'm not sure.
Yes.
I apologize if that's not the right term for our agency. Usually they have terms that require additional resources within a very short time frame or a specific time frame. And it becomes an issue when it's sort of I don't want to use these terms, but it's almost a breach of a contract when you don't fulfill those term requirements. So I would ask that we make sure that we move a little more expeditiously in the future with these agreement types so that we're fulfilling the terms of these executed agreements with our partners. I understand at times we get caught up in a lot of different things, but a reimbursement of this magnitude is pretty, it's large for us as an agency.
Yes.
It's not something we can absorb easily.
Understood.
I have a follow-up question. Is when you said it has to go back to commission, is it a department or is it proffered by a county commissioner or it's?
So the department will, typically what they do is that they'll run it through the commissioner of that district to sponsor the item through the board. So I think all that's been, to my understanding, all that has been worked out. It's just right now they need to go through their committees to ultimately go to the board. I think they got to take it through their transportation committee and then it will go to the board, the county commission, one of the county commission meetings. It was scheduled to go in October and that didn't happen. We are in communications with the Department of Public Works and Transportation to try to see when at the earliest they can get that on their agendas.
Yeah, as a follow-up, Tori, it obviously be helpful to make sure that the commissioner of the district obviously is well aware of the expediency of this matter at this point.
Absolutely. Sorry, through the vice chair.
ahead.
Absolutely. And we've had conversations both at the commission level. I think, and I'm not gonna deviate from the comment from one, but I believe that it also may be at the county attorney's office. I think there's some determination as well. So just for the board in this setting, I think the county attorney's office may be providing some guidance to the commission and staff. So I believe that's probably why it has been in a pause state.
I have
Board
fo-
Member Miller.
I have a follow-up. So you said that that agreement was for the 8 million?
The-
But don't we already have an agreement with them for those
The-
overruns based on the original agreement?
The original agreement did not contemplate additional funds, so they need to approve the additional funds to be able to reimburse the final cost of the park and ride project.
Okay, well then, I'm going to retract some of my comments then, if in fact the original agreement between the two parties didn't contemplate cost overruns being the responsibility of a third party,
If I,
then clearly they
If I-
weren't
yeah, sorry.
in
If-
violation of their contract. I'm a little confused because you kind of said it did contemplate overruns, so I'm just trying to understand. I
If I
apologize.
may, the
If I
original-
could through the vice chair.
Go ahead.
Let me have the CFO first, and then I see your hand, if you don't mind, our director of toll operations, Madam Vice Chair. Okay.
Sure.
And then I'll have another follow-up about the Halley construction agreement.
So Secretary Miller, there was I guess there was several parties to the agreement, was DOT, the county, and the authority at that point in time. The intent of that project was that the authority would take over the park and ride. And due to the ongoing litigation, the county decided that they would take over the park and ride. So when there was cost overruns, we assumed them because that would be our asset, our project. And there was a letter of understanding after they decided that the park and ride would actually go back to the county. So it was not an actual executed agreement regarding those additional funds. The intention was the park and ride project was going to be an asset of the organization. Thereafter is when we went to have communication with them. If you're going to take the asset over, then these cost overruns would have to be reversed to us.
Thank you for clarifying that. That makes a big difference. And again, I retract my earlier comment. My next comment would be, or question would be, for the ramp that's being modified that we're discussing today, was this the only work associated with that project that would have contemplated funding from the county?
Yes.
Okay, so there was no original agreement, and there was no local funds associated with this project initially. So-
Correct.
And where are we in the drafting of that agreement? Because you said the other agreement was working its way through the pipeline, so where are we on that?
I believe that agreement has been drafted, and that agreement has been already drafted, and the last we left it was being reviewed by respective legal counsel to be able to finalize it. So we are picking that up again and trying to finalize that so we can put it into the earliest convenient agenda on the board.
And thank you for bearing with all my questions.
Sure. Did you want to yield?
Sorry. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I think the CFO clarified. I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay. Board Member Pages, did you have? Okay. All right. Let's see. Any other final discussions? Okay. Is there a motion for approval of the item?
Move.
Second.
Thank you. The vote, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say nay. Motion passes. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Next, we will move to the regular agenda. The first item is a public hearing item on a budget amendment. I will now open the public hearing for public comments. Mr. Alston, do we have any speakers for public comment on this budget amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No one has signed up to speak for the public comment period. However, this is the public hearing on the budget amendment. If there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item, please come forward at this time. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this item? Please come forward at this time. Seeing none, back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will close the public comment period in this public hearing. I will now recognize Mr. Alston to introduce the item formally for the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The requested action is a motion to approve reallocating $2 million of the approved budget for transit operations to toll ITS operations, roadway, and contingency. As you know, in the fiscal year 24 budget, this was approved back in June 2023 by the previous board. In my view, as I've shared with each of you individually and for the public, transit is a core function of the county. And I don't believe that it's a core service of GMX as our agency, hence my recommendation to you. Subsequently, I think I've shared, at least it came up in one board briefing, I think we also subsequently found some additional funds for transit also in our work program. So what I'd like to do for consideration of the board, if I could, Madam Chair, is to also include the additional 10 million that we found also in the work program for Transit Improvement Project number 4004 that was approved in the work program for 24 through 28. In FY24, it was $5 million. In FY25, it was an additional $5 million. So the recommendation before you remains as is, but there's an additional 10 million that we've also found. So instead of 2 million, the initial find, it's now up to 12 million. So we'd ask for your consideration that we reconsider those transit items, remove it from those projects for your reconsideration in the upcoming budget process.
Thank you. So let me understand. Instead of 2 million, it's 12 million? What do you mean you found $10 million? Can you just elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So, yes. So the recommendation is now $12 million that we have that was originally allocated by the prior board for transit operations. So that number is gone from 2 million to 12 million. Actually, I'll defer to our CFO, maybe just to give a quick 30-second highlight of that in those two areas in the work program.
So within the capital program, there is one specific project that is transit improvements. And we allocated of that 5-year work program, 10 million in fiscal year 24, 5 million in fiscal year 25, another $5 million. That project has not begun. Conversations have not begun with the county as well. We placed that money in there as a good faith to move transit forward. We've had some discussions with transit personnel last year, but at this point in time, given the delays, we feel that we can actually have that money reallocated someplace else, or we can utilize that fund in next year's work program when we redevelop the work program on several initiatives that will come out of this year's work program on planning projects that may go into PD&E or may go into construction.
Board Member Pages.
I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with going from 2 to 12. I'm sure that's a legitimate transit issue. But I think I would like to look at what we're taking out of the budget. I was the first one. I'm not the first one. At least in my briefing, I was the first one to say these $2 million. We're not a bus company. We build roads. We do a really good job building roads, and that's what we do. But we're not a bus company. So I'm comfortable with the $2 million. I just don't know what the other 10 are, right? I am sympathetic to the fact that this is a complex county and there's a lot of issues and we just can't have roads. I mean, there are transit issues we need to incorporate. So I want to understand what those $10 million are before I vote to take them out of the budget. So I would myself not be in agreement of going to 12, keep it at 2. We can bring those 5 or those 10 back at the December meeting.
I'm good with that. Through the chair.
Yes,
We can
Mr.
absolutely
Olson.
accommodate. We can absolutely accommodate that. No problem.
Chair.
Yes,
Thank you. So,
Commissioner Miller.
and I can appreciate the ask. In the future, when we have these budget amendments, so that 2 million is actually a line item in our work program. If we could just include the line item in our documentation. I don't have our work program yet in front of us, but I'd like to be able to correlate work program line items with our budget items. That's just a personal request from me. And I understand your concern about having that discussion just today, given it's relatively new news, and I don't think we were all necessarily attuned to the fact that there was that additional resources. But I do think it's important that we start to analyze that as it is the $5 million is a current year budget issue. But we also, I think, need to have that overall discussion about understanding our work program in general and really becoming attuned to what we intend to do with our resources. Thank you.
Yes, Board Member Fatima Perez.
Tori, this this fixed bus route that's on the summary here, is that, how does it align with everything that the county did recently with realigning all their bus routes and whatnot?
All right, so I have one. You want to address the issue? The follow-up?
So I'm not 100% sure how the county has done their realignment of services. This line item was intended to supplement the existing express service that the county runs on 836 as a pilot, and then eventually it would the county was hoping that it would be replaced by our service. Since that operation hasn't begun, and that $2 million is an operating expense, not a work program capital expense, but an operating expense. That's where we bring this item in to see if we can reallocate the existing funds to other operating expenses this year where they're needed to advance other priorities. Right now, the discussions with the east-west corridor and the bus services have kind of fallen through. We haven't done much more with going out and looking for that service. So, we would have to, as Board Member Miller stated, we need to have discussions on how the agency wants to move forward as it relates to transit. How do we fit into that role, if we fit into that role at all? And then we would accommodate, or we would budget accordingly based on the direction from this board. But right now, we're not doing anything with transit, so we feel that those monies can be put to use somewhere else.
Mr. Chair, I have a follow-up,
Yes.
Chair Cancio. Yeah, just, Tori, make sure that we are, because they went through this whole realignment on their bus routes and all that, got to make sure that the county, we're talking to them and seeing how are we an integral part of that.
Through the chair?
Yes.
100%. Absolutely.
Any other discussion?
Yeah.
Commissioner Pages.
This is a complex issue, right? Because up until recently, we sat on TPO, and for issues we won't discuss now, obviously, this agency doesn't have a position on TPO as of right now. They're the ones who are kind of outlining the strategy, and I think we, as a responsible agency in the county, should be involved in those discussions and see how we can help. And at the end of the day, it's helping all residents of Miami-Dade County. So I'm not sure how we're going to approach this, Tori. I think we're going to need to, in spite of everything else, we'll need to invite perhaps TPO in to give us a presentation so we all kind of understand what their master plans are and how we kind of fit into those equations. I think that's an important macro issue. And then we'll go from there. So, but that's where we are.
Through the chair?
Yes, Mr. Alston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just for the record, and you are absolutely correct, Board Member Pages, we have had numerous conversations with the TPO, staff to staff. And I will tell you that we remain in contact, remain engaged, and we've continued to have that professional staff to staff conversation. So I can assure the board collectively that we'll continue those conversations.
Thank you, Mr. Alston. Any other comments before we vote?
And Madam Chair,
Yes.
just want to clarify, we've removed the recommendation for the 10 million. It is the original recommendation that's before you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, did we make a motion on this item? Did we already make a motion to approve this item? No?
I don't think we did, so.
No.
We didn't. We went straight to discussion.
Okay. So, do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Is there a second? Second. All in favor say, I think we already had discussion, so any more discussion? So then we're going to vote. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. The next item on the regular agenda is an update on the search process for the executive director. And before we begin, I will ask Mr. Olson to step out of the boardroom while the board deliberates on this item. Now I will ask Board Member Blanco to provide an update to the board and propose any action needed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe, do you all have a copy of the summary explanation in your packets? I'm reminded I was requested by the board to liaison with the agency and the procurement department in terms of bringing to light some options for an executive national search for a new director. I commend the team internally here at MGX who have done great work in putting this information together. Before you, there are several items, several options and items for discussion. They reached out to several state agencies, similar organizations as ourselves, to get an understanding of how they have performed similar searches like this in the past. And as a result, there's several items listed here. There's two recommended firms that will do national searches at specific kinds of costs, obviously depending on the final salary of the director. And there's also a breakdown of possibility of doing an internal search using internal resources and several services that the GMX could use and post in different places in order to be able to do that national search. The important item here is that it's a national search. This is something that it's nationwide, using several resources that are that have nationwide attention and nationwide presence. So at this point, my recommendation is that we discuss how we may want to proceed, meaning the options of using a firm or proceeding to use some internal resources for that matter.
Okay, so let's have discussion. Basically, it will cost us about maybe $100,000 if we hire a firm, give or take.
Probably a little bit more, but yes, it's in that area. That's correct.
And if we do it in-house, it'll cost how much?
If we do, for example, let's say a 15 to 30 day posting on different services, probably looking at several $1,000s per item, let's say, give or take, anywhere from $250 to $2,500, depending on
Per
where
ad.
per ad,
Correct.
per posting, correct.
Yeah, I saw Wall Street Journal is like $2,500 for one
Yeah,
ad.
yes, I think they were one of the more expensive ones, but there's several of them, including Mass Transit Magazine, which caught my attention. We just focus on transit. And also the IBTTA is there as well, where they have processes to do that and exposure.
So if we place the ads, who internally would be analyzing, reviewing the responses? I think my concern is putting too much work in our staff. It's a big responsibility.
My understanding is that it will be their procurement department at the beginning, but
I believe
Yes,
it will be
Jackie.
the Human Resource Department that will take care of that.
Thank you. But who exactly in the Human Resources Department?
Yeah, they're working on hiring or filling in that position.
Yeah.
I believe that's,
Excuse me.
yeah, defer to general counsel.
General Counsel?
Madam Chair, I believe that, yeah, the process could go really any way you would like, but you could either form a committee. You know, unless you've already done so, I know Board Member Blanco is leading the effort right now. But my understanding is you could, you know, proceed to post an ad whichever way you want to, or engage a firm. Then internally, you know, we could have a review internally here at the agency. You know, we could have procurement and HR. I would be happy to assist, you know, if directed. And then, yeah, we could all present that to Board Member Blanco on a committee if so formed, and you could then make a decision as to, you know, which way you want to go with the search and the ultimate selection of a candidate.
Thank you. Board Member Pages?
Statutorily, what's our requirement for finding a permanent executive director?
The requirement is that you conduct a nationwide search. That's on statute, on Chapter 348, and I believe Part 1. That's really the hurdle you have to meet, is you have to have a bona fide nationwide search.
Correct.
And then really at that point, it's a matter of just engagement of a firm or doing it in-house, and then proceeding to screen the resumes. And then you would have, ultimately, the board would interview, according to our bylaws, the board would conduct the interviews of I believe it's the 3 top candidates.
Is there a timing requirement for that?
No,
So are we obligated to do it right now?
we're not obligated.
Are we statutorily required to do it right now?
No, there's no requirement to do it right now.
Okay. I'm not sure this is the right time to do this. I mean, I understand we need to do this, we need to do this process, but there's a lot of external noise right now. Are we going to attract, we don't have an HR person, which you clearly identified, and we knew that. And there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of environmental noise. And I'm just not sure if we're going to attract the right candidate with that noise. And we're also in November, at the end of the year.
Yes.
I'm not saying we put it off forever, but could we put it off until the first quarter of next year? And then take it back up and then proceed in that process, and hopefully much of that noise hopefully will be taken care of. I'm proposing, as opposed to spinning our wheels, forming committees. We have no HR person, and I'm not sure how the process is going to work. That's my comment.
Board Member Miller?
I appreciate the comment. I think it's important, understanding we still have, as you noted, environmental noise around us. But I do think it's important that we set the tone and determine how we want to progress. I don't believe it's a great idea to try to advertise right now. I do think it would be important to wait till next calendar year, but I do think we shouldn't wait until next calendar year to make a determination of how we would like to progress. I do believe we do need a HR administrator on board, for sure. But I would hate to wait for that person, then come back in January or February, continue to have this discussion, and then start the process. So I would prefer we continue to have this conversation and dialogue, perhaps come up with a path forward, and then set the timeline for that path forward, as opposed to just deferring.
Board Member Pages?
I can agree with that. Absolutely. I'm not suggesting we put it off and we just start from zero, starting in the first quarter of next year. I just don't think we should be advertising yet. I don't think we should sign into our contract with a agency if we decide to do that as a board. But yes, I totally agree. I think we should put the infrastructure in place and the methodology in place on how we want to do this. Absolutely agree.
Board Member Blanco, any comments?
I absolutely agree with that.
Board Member Perez?
Same here. I just, we can come up I don't know if today, but maybe with a time frame. But certainly, I agree
Oh,
with
I think,
all the sentiment.
right, I think that fundamentally, there's two ways of going about it. A recognized national search firm or doing it in-house. My preference would be a national search firm. It's a little bit more money, but I think we criticize past behaviors of other hirings for when they say it's national and really they didn't look too far. At the same time, my past experience when I was a member of the Board of Trustees at Miami-Dade College, when they did a lot of national searches and we got some brilliant people from out of state come to South Florida, and that usually doesn't work out. So there's a good and the bad, but I would hate to have this responsibility put in a very small group of people that we don't even know who our HR director is. So we can discuss whether we should postpone it and do it in-house, whether we want to postpone it and hire one of the national firms, or if you just want to table this discussion. So,
I'd prefer not to table it. I'd prefer to sort of have the conversation. And I appreciate that sometimes it is difficult to do these sorts of things in-house. If we chose that path, it doesn't commit us exclusively to that path. Should we not feel that the
results?
results or the resumes that we receive, really, if we don't feel that we're getting the right type of individuals who are interested in the position or the right number of individuals, we can always pivot, I assume. So one does not preclude the other. Just checking to make sure that would be the case.
Those were
Obviously,
my,
it's all an expenditure, and we want to be mindful of that.
those were my initial private thoughts about, we're also trying to be fiscally responsible, and there may not be any harm in just using some internal resources first, not today, but when we decide to move forward, and put that out there, see what kind of responses we get, and then there's nothing to stop us from making a change and going with a nationwide firm. All the options are there. This is more of to have an understanding of what the options are,
No, and
what others have done.
Right, and I thank you for your work on this. I think it's great. I think those are great options, great national search firms, great ideas to do it in-house as well. But considering where we are, I agree that we're not in a position to do it right now in-house, or maybe not at all. So, Board Member Perez?
Yeah. Do we have a time frame of the HR?
Well, we would need to
Person?
call ask
Yeah,
Tori.
okay, so Tori would know.
We can
Okay.
ask him
'Cause
later.
that'll give us some sort of an idea of when we can put a time frame on advertising the position.
I guess I would ask, does anyone else in the room have an understanding of that timeline?
The executive director and the staff did go through an interview process, and I think we are pretty close. I think within a month, I would assume that we'd have someone aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, are we gonna make a proposal?
I guess,
To,
yeah.
a proposal to initiate a internal search at the appropriate time, and if the results are not acceptable to the board, or if the board is not comfortable with the results of the internal search, then we would retain an outside firm? Is that what is this the proposal that you would like to make, or is there a motion?
Not make a proposal.
No.
Well, I'd like to propose that for the December meeting, we come back with a clear timeline and a clear plan on how we want to do this. I don't think we need to do searching in November, December, but that there's a clear timeline. So by this meeting, we'll do this. Hopefully, the HR person will be in, and then we can kind of start that process, but have clear structure or a clearer structure for the December meeting. Can we do that? That's an actionable.
But Board Member Pages, who is gonna create that timeline? Is that Board Member?
Chairman, I'm sorry, the head of the committee.
which we would have to create a committee to do that.
The committee of one.
My thoughts are to propose then to, I don't want to use table, that's not the word. Yes, to have a timeline to rediscuss this again in December. But I'm not clear if we want to all make a decision on which would be the first type of process that we would use. My thoughts are towards a internal search, but again, having the proper resources and direction from somebody is important. So I don't know if we should just revisit that in December based on the timeline that we're hearing that we may have an HR director or somebody who can manage that process also and work with us towards that.
I have a question.
Board Member Miller.
Should we go the route of a nationwide search using a firm? How long does it take to contract with a firm?
That I can't answer. Do we know?
If you approve the motion to contract with the firm now, I will probably in a week or so we will have an issue a contract to the lowest bidder recommended here, and then there's a timeline there of how long it will take, more or less, to actually have candidates in place. So hiring the firm will be. Well, next week is holiday, so maybe 2 weeks.
It's the holidays. It's hard to do anything, right? Okay.
Yes.
Madam Chair, and just to take a step back to the actual committee, according to our bylaws, there has to be a committee of 3 board members to conduct the search. So in addition to Board Member Blanco, there would have to be 2 other board members as part of this search committee.
That's a use.
So it would not be a committee of 1.
Right.
Good.
But are you sure that there's no timeline like we can have an interim director indefinitely?
Well, I wouldn't say indefinitely, although there's no guidance, but I think there's nothing that mandates us to do it now. And there's nothing that says that we can't wait as an agency until you can follow your process, especially given the fact that, the agency is recently formed.
Board Member Pages?
Thank you. If we're gonna bring in an outside agency, or an outside hiring firm, I would like to have them present to us on what they're gonna be doing and where they're gonna go. And that's a bidding, we have to decide who we're gonna go with, and we're gonna bring more than one, right? We're gonna bring several.
Correct. So right now, what I did is I contacted different transportation agencies to see who they have utilized.
Yeah.
And these are the options that I put in front of you. And I could, if you would like to move forward with the search firm, I could ask the lowest bidder to come present to you. The one thing that I would like to add, that a part of the cost, if we do award a contract to the lowest bidder, 1/3 of the cost is due right when we sign the contract.
Right,
Just
exactly.
I just wanted to.
Exactly,
bring that
exactly. So
point.
that's not something you just take lightly in that regard.
Correct.
Let me try again. I think this is gonna take a little bit longer than we think. It's a little bit more complex. It has some substantial cost to it. I don't want to table it. I don't want to make it go away. I'm not anyway suggesting we have an indefinite interim director. But I think in December, if we can come back, and I guess now we have to create a new committee of 3, and we come back with some semblance of a plan. It could be high level, 30,000 feet, but a plan on how we're going to intend to do this. And the plan can come from the committee and say, look, we're going to go internal first, and then sometime, if that doesn't work, and then sometime in March or April or February, then we execute or we move towards a thing. And in the interim, we might bring in the search firms to speak to us and explain to us what the process is. But I think we need to take our time to find the right person. So I suggest that we just have a 30,000-foot plan presented to us for the December meeting. And then we can kind of discuss and refine it there and decide how to move forward. That's my proposal.
Then I would like to make a motion to create a committee.
So do I have volunteers for the committee?
I volunteer with Chair Blanco.
Who else wants to volunteer?
Who else is most qualified to review?
Oh, don't look at me.
Okay, I volunteer.
Thank you.
So we have a committee formed.
Yeah, and Chair Concio. And it's basically really just to set the process. It's not necessarily to review, as I am not, I don't have that experience to review that, but it's really just the committee is just to set the process and the timeframes. That's what I think.
I am a little confused. Is this under sunshine, this committee?
This is according to the GMX bylaws, the committee. It's on section 6.2.a.
But how does that work?
As far as how does the committee work?
Yeah, how do we communicate with each other on this issue?
Well, I can work with you on that.
So it goes through you, or we go through the legal counsel?
Yeah, we would work with the committee, yes. We can figure out the exactly what the process would be in order to comply with sunshine.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a committee created. So what is the proposal then regarding, we take any action? Do we just make a proposal or a motion to wait for the December meeting?
That's what I would propose. I think the new committee should absorb a lot of this material in more detail to be able to have a further educated discussion, and then we can bring back recommendations for the December meeting,
Perfect.
if that makes sense.
It makes sense, Board Member Blanco. I also like the idea very much of having them come present, and they can come present without us having an obligation to sign a contract. So we could even ask for a presentation in January.
Exactly.
And just coordinate that and, with no obligations or commitments.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, so is there a motion?
So I make the motion to have the new established committee review the material for the requested item and return in December with recommendations to the board.
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? So the motion passes. So now we can call Mr. Alston back. Yeah. Oops. So now we will move to reports. Our first report is from our outside counsel. I would like to ask Jason Gonzalez and Paul Hawk, or Jason, to come forward from Lawson Hawk Gonzalez PLLC to provide the board an update.
Thank you, and I'm Jason Gonzalez, and I am here with my law partner, Paul Huck, and he gave me the honors of getting to give you the litigation update. And usually, the litigation update is not fun, but this one is fun because you've won everything. We're at the end of a series of 5 lawsuits, really 6 legal rulings that I'll talk about. And I just want to run through those and recap them. I know your executive director and Raphael have given you updates throughout everything that's happened, but it's been over a long period of time and that you've gotten bits and pieces, and it'd probably be good for me just to kind of summarize everything that's happened and some of the very good legal rulings that come out of those victories in court, because they're going to help going forward. Because while there's no litigation pending now, and we're here today, and I'll talk about how we're not recommending that you need to file any new lawsuits related to a new legally defective county ordinance that passed, and I'll explain the reasons for that. But it would be good for you to kind of for us to summarize all the things that have happened, because there are some that don't want this to be over, and it'll be good for all of you to have all the sound legal reasoning when anybody talks to you to try to deter any foolish waste of toll-payer money on any additional litigation. So that's what I'm gonna run through. So I'll just first recap each of the lawsuits over this now over 4.5 year period, and it's been a pleasure for us to have been able to represent you. We thank you for that. It started with what we call the MDX-1 lawsuit that was filed up in Tallahassee. That ended, and that was filed even before the governor acted on the first piece of legislation that created GMX and dissolved MDX. That ultimately ended up at the First District Court of Appeal in Tallahassee that ruled in your favor unanimously with a 3-judge panel. And you may remember the public official standing doctrine was the basis for that reversal. And for anyone that doesn't understand what that is and the significance of it, they were saying that MDX, as a public official or state agency, does not have standing to go into court and challenge the constitutionality of a statute that the legislature's passed and the governor signed that affects that state agency's powers. Now, that's a long-standing legal doctrine that is in keeping with the separation of powers. The reason for that is we don't allow, the courts don't allow, and the separation of powers does not allow executive branch or even local governments like Miami-Dade County to file lawsuits challenging acts of the legislature. It's the legislature's policy-making decision, and we don't let executive branch agencies or local subdivisions of the state, like a county, to spend their vast resources challenging what the legislature's done, because that would bog down and eliminate the legislature's power to keep making those policy decisions. That's not to say that private parties, if there had been a private party injured by an unconstitutional piece of legislation, those are the folks that have standing to go in with their own resources and file a challenge if they've been injured. So that was what the First District Court of Appeals said there. They didn't have to get to the merits of the legislation. So that was MDX-1. It ended March 31st of 2021 with a unanimous ruling. And then MDX-2 is the lawsuit we refer to as MDX-2, where the county had passed that first ordinance, and they filed another lawsuit. The county intervened in that litigation down here in Miami. And that one ended October 25th, 2023, with another unanimous ruling from a 3-judge panel now at the Third District Court of Appeal here in Miami, a ruling in your favor. And on that one, the public official standing doctrine problems were there, but the court chose to rule on the fact that the Department of Transportation was not added in the suit, and they were an indispensable party. And it's actually a very good thing that the court chose to reverse in that instance on that issue. So now we have 2 legal rulings that help us going forward. And the issue there was when MDX lost the lawsuit up in Tallahassee in front of the First District Court of Appeals, they come down to Miami and filed a claim attempting to do the same thing they had already lost on, but they recharacterized the claims with trying to quiet title on the Expressway system and other assets of the Expressway Authority in favor of MDX. And they did not name the Department of Transportation as a party, yet the Department of Transportation still owns the Expressway rights of way. This is you are a state agency, and MDX was a state agency governing the state-owned assets that are part of the state highway system. They are not they're not owned by the county. They're not the MDX was never a county department or division. It was a state agency. And that's not a legally debatable thing that some lawyers came up with. That's right in the founding ordinance that said MDX is created an agency of the state existing under the Florida Expressway Authority Act with that authority, which is a state act. It was always a state agency. And the legislation that dissolved MDX and created GMX is very explicit. You're a state agency. The county's only role is it was given some appointment authority for some board members that have not yet been appointed. But it was always a state agency. The assets of the expressway rights of way that were only operational and financial control were transferred over to MDX in 1996 in a transfer agreement with DOT. And that MDX2 lawsuit sought to quiet title in favor of MDX to the ownership of all those assets without DOT even in the case. They wanted to adjudicate DOT's ownership of an enormous asset in their absence. And so the Third District Court of Appeals said, you can't do that. And then the other claim that they had made there is they were seeking a declaratory judgment as to who are the parties to that transfer agreement that DOT entered with MDX back in 1996. And of course, the two parties to that agreement originally were DOT and MDX. Today, you're the successor. That transfer agreement is today between DOT and GMX. But again, they tried to adjudicate the parties' rights under this very important contract without adding DOT as a party to come in and speak. And the law is very clear that that's a real party in interest. DOT was a real party in interest. They were not named in the lawsuit. We know why they were avoiding doing that, because they didn't want to go back up in front of the First District Court of Appeal that had unanimously ruled against them. So they wanted to leave DOT out because litigation against DOT by law has to be maintained up in Tallahassee, where the First District Court of Appeal is. That's okay because MDX2 proceeded. We end up in front of the Third District Court of Appeal. Paul Huck and I had our partner. We formed a law firm at the beginning of the year with Alan Lawson, who had just he'd retired from the Florida Supreme Court. We had him argue the case at the Third District Court of Appeal. And again, a unanimous three-judge panel ruling in your favor in that, and setting another very good legal ruling there. Then there was the MDX3 lawsuit. So there was a third lawsuit that MDX filed. And that one ended up in a preliminary emergency injunction hearing before Circuit Judge Lisa Walsh here in Miami. And we received a denial of MDX's motion for injunction in that case. There was a hearing down here in Miami. And she issued that opinion, that order, on August 16th of 2023, while we were waiting for the MDX2 oral argument at the Third District Court of Appeal. And then promptly after she denied their motion for injunction, attempting to enjoin operation of the new 2023 state legislation, MDX voluntarily dismissed that MDX3 lawsuit. So that one was over. We didn't have to go up on appeal on it. The county, in the intervening time, filed what's called an all writs petition at the Third District Court of Appeal. There's a mechanism they have to go straight to the Third District Court of Appeal, and we responded to that. And on August 18th of this year, 2023, the Third District Court of Appeal unanimously denied that all writs petition that the county had filed. We filed one lawsuit, and that was to get Bank of America to allow access to the operational bank accounts. As the law expressly provided, those are assets of GMX, and MDX was telling the bank not to allow access to those accounts. So we brought an action up in Tallahassee, and the circuit judge ruled in our favor on all counts on that. And that ruling was on August 7th of 2023, and it was not appealed. So that ruling stands. And then it wasn't a separate lawsuit, but in the MDX2 litigation, you will recall that all of you and myself were subject to a motion for contempt. It was actually criminal contempt I appreciate all of your patience in discretion in having to be subjected to that. We've stayed the course. We followed the process. And not only did the Third District Court of Appeal deny that preposterous motion, they actually struck it. They entered an order granting a motion to strike that motion for contempt. So I consider that almost a sixth victory because it was so far outside the other five victories. So those are the six rulings that have all in your favor. There's no litigation pending on any of this. But just to recap collectively all of the good legal rulings we have for going forward to hopefully deter those who want this to not be over and continue litigating. We have the public official standing doctrine ruling in our favor, that MDX, and that applies to the county as well. The county is affected by this legislation. It names them specifically as appointing authorities. So neither the county nor MDX can be filing any further lawsuits that challenge the legislation that establishes GMX as the controlling state agency. And then we have the ruling from the third DCA that says that DOT is an indispensable party in any litigation. And within the first District Court of Appeal ruling, way back in 2021, we had another significant legal ruling where they said MDX is a state agency. So that debate is also over. We have precedent from the first District Court of Appeal, and that, again, should have been a very easy legal issue for everybody. It was a shame that it was even in contention because that's expressed in the statute and the MDX ordinance and the GMX statute. The other ruling we have from the Bank of America case is we have Judge Angela Dempsey saying exactly what the 2023 legislation says, and that is all the assets of the old, now dissolved MDX everything is transferred according to the statute, employees, contracts, assets. So we have that in a ruling as well. So all of these, ultimately, these rulings all in your favor. The courts never had to get to the ultimate merits of some of the arguments MDX was making because there were so many other legal defects that courts have to decide before they even get to the merits. And if they ever do get to the merits, we're completely confident in how the ultimate ruling would come out. But we're not recommending that you need to do anything with respect to this latest ordinance. And I just want to talk briefly about the first ordinance and the legal defects with that. And then the second one, again, just so you have a good frame of mind, this is a good time to kind of look back and summarize what had happened there. So you had the first ordinance right around the time the first District Court of Appeal ruled unanimously in your favor against MDX. The county passed an ordinance, and it was predicated on a provision of the 1885 Constitution that was preserved in the 1968 Constitution, saying that the county can, under very limited circumstances, dissolve or modify certain governmental entities whose jurisdiction lies wholly within Miami-Dade County. So that's what they were trying to use to suggest they had a power to abolish you. The ordinance was legally defective in many, many other respects. If a court had ever gotten to those issues, it would have found it to be legally invalid. And I'll give you a couple of examples of them because the new ordinance has all those same legal defects and an additional one. But some of those legal defects are that the ordinance back in 2021, actually right in its language, it purports to nullify several state general laws of the legislature. Now, no constitution gives any county, including Miami-Dade County, the authority to dissolve provisions of state law that are general laws, not local laws. For instance, Section 13, right in the county's 2021 ordinance, they said they're nullifying 5 of the sections of the legislation creating GMX. One of those was Section 13, and if you read Section 13 of the bill the legislature passed, that was the repeal of the Florida Expressway Authority Act of 1990, applied to the whole state. Several expressway authorities around the state were created and had authority under that. The legislature decided in 2019 to repeal that. Yet the county said that they are nullifying this state general law, which would theoretically have the effect of reenacting or the county is passing a new state law for the whole state, applicable to the whole state. That there is no authority for a county to do that. We were surprised to even see that they would put that in writing. So that was one of the things that was done there. Again, courts didn't have to get to it because there were so many other legal defects in the lawsuits, and there were several other problems with that. In addition, and then, of course, the additional legislation or ordinance from the county this year, they completely ignored that the legislature decided it was going to go ahead and provide some jurisdiction for GMX in Monroe County. Just to end the debate, anyone confused using that 1885 Constitution power, they added some of Monroe County, but the county simply ignored that was in there, and the ordinance has some unusual language suggesting, well, there are no expressways actually already in Monroe County, so you don't have any authority to do anything there. Therefore, we're going to abolish GMX under the 1885 Constitution. That is not the case at all. It is expressed that you have some jurisdiction in Monroe County, and so they can't abolish GMX. They didn't have the ability to do that in the first ordinance, of course. I want to make this point too. As you have heard the talking points from legal counsel for MDX and the county, that somehow what has been done here is a threat to the county's home rule power. GMX is not a threat to the county's home rule power. And we are supportive of the very special constitutional home rule powers of the county. But GMX is different. It was always and MDX was different. It was always a state agency governing state-owned assets. And there was just some confusion with some, suggesting that MDX was somehow a county department. It never was. By its own founding documents, it never was. The county did not fund it. It was funded by tolls collected on assets that DOT had in those expressways that it transferred operational and financial control. The argument has been made that, well, now they're taking the expressway authority, and next it'll be the port or the airport. That port and the airport, if you look at those founding documents, they're totally different. Those are county entities. There has never been a suggestion that those were going to be taken, or the legislature would ever do anything similar, because they're just of an entirely different character than MDX and GMX. So that has just been a false narrative that everybody in this room should push back on if they ever hear that. That is just completely inapplicable. And it was very clear that it was abundantly clear to us that the judges we were in front of, they understood that. They saw that. It was something that was thrown out in court, at least two of the hearings. So that's something to be aware of. The way you honor a constitution, such as a home rule power in a constitution, is you have it applied and followed within its parameters. You don't just say, well, there's home rule power, so the county can do anything. It can seize state agencies and take expressways. So that is something that we have. I want you to know your position has been legally correct from the beginning on that. You have a righteous, correct legal position, and there has been in no way a threat, any precedent that would be set with respect to this state agency that you govern that is a threat to Miami-Dade's home rule power. I'll conclude. I'll try to conclude quickly. I'm already going long, but it's important for everybody to understand the problems with what has been done in the past. And I'll conclude with this. We, again, are not recommending that you need to do anything, file any new lawsuits with respect to this new ordinance. The new ordinance has all the defects that the first ordinance had, and also you have the additional jurisdiction in Monroe County. It's not merely a legally defective ordinance. It's legally frivolous. There is nothing about that ordinance that you need to follow the state statute that created GMX and governs this expressway system. There's nothing you need to do with respect to the ordinance. And right now, there's nothing pending. There has been no new lawsuit filed with respect to that. I'm happy to answer any questions, but really, it has been a privilege and an honor to represent you these past 4 years. You have been extremely patient and stayed the course. We always felt very confident that the courts would ultimately rule the way they have, and hopefully, with these 6 victories, we won't have to contend with any further attempts.
Thank you so much, Jason. Does anybody want to ask him any questions? I mean, I'm thrilled that litigation is over. I don't like litigation. I don't want to see more litigation. It's costly and it's unnecessary. But what about the position in the PTO that Board Member Pages was removed or not allowed to attend the meetings anymore?
I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know all of the conversations that have been going on, but I understand some have been communicating back that there are that is a entirely legally incorrect position that someone took, refusing to seat Mr. Pages. The last I heard, there was maybe a little optimism that they were going to change positions. I think I even heard they're considering hiring outside counsel with some of their resources, and we will certainly speak with that counsel to help them do their review and come to the undeniable legal conclusion that ordinance has no validity and Mr. Pages should be seated on the TPO. If there, I don't know, you may have additional information.
Board Member Pages?
Yeah, I clearly don't want to talk about this.
Yes,
but yes, it appears that TPO does recognize there's some conflict there. The county and they have the exact same legal counsel. So that's kind of where the issue was. And it is my understanding from the executive director that they are seeking outside counsel, independent counsel, to review the matter. That's what I understand, and that's been known. That's not secret. That's known. I do have a comment that I would like to make. I think the way this board has handled, our legal counsel's handled this issue for the last 4 years, 4.5 years, has been stellar. I mean, I'm sorry. There hasn't been any public comments from our side. We've just done what we've been asked to do, and we have proceeded, and you guys have handled the institution incredibly well. I am concerned on the reckless, somewhat unhinged comments coming toward us from several people on the other side, to the point of being called terrorists, being called thieves, and actually ethnically insensitive comments. Considering that the majority of this board is of Cuban American descent. I am concerned on safety because there are unwell people in our society. And when you hear elected officials and leaders on the other side calling us terrorists and thieves, I don't know where some people may take that to the next level. So I'm asking publicly, I'm asking in general, that these are issues that are dealt with in the legal world, and I personally don't appreciate the reckless and aggressive tone coming from the other side. So that's a comment. That's not a question. Thank you.
Thank you, and I agree 100%.
Well, thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. So now we're going to move to, next on the agenda is the interim executive director's report. And since the report has been shared, I would like to recognize Mr. Alston to provide any additional highlights for the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, board members. It's hard to follow our outside counsel, and thank you again, Jason and Paul, for your presence and providing that update. You are correct, Madam Chair. The report is in the public domain, so I just want to highlight a few updates, and I'll quickly try to run through this update. As a follow-up, as you know, you've asked to focus on governance. We have scheduled meeting discussions on your specific board policies for the next several meetings. For your December meeting, we're going to focus on the executive policies, the January meeting on the engineering policies, your March meeting on HR, administration, and communications, and then your May meeting will focus on finance and procurement. I know Board Member Miller, that was a big push at the last meeting. We heard you loud and clear, so that is in front of you. Also, board members, you spoke around the agency overview and another follow-up to your board member orientation. The General Counsel and I have put together, along with the senior leadership team, a presentation for you. So we're looking at December 14th and 15th. We'll work with you on scheduling and calendars. So we'll do that, of course, offline as well. I'll jump quickly to financial sustainability and overall agency operations. We are close to engaging a third party, as you know, to help in the review of sample inherited contracts from our predecessor agency. I'll keep the board apprised of where we are with that. I want to jump to some good news around daily operations. Really excited to announce publicly that in less than 90 days, GMX as an organization, we've identified more than $1.3 million in savings and cost avoidances starting from the top. So thank you, board, for your leadership, your guidance, and really thank you to the staff of GMX. And again, you'll see where those savings and cost avoidances, and I purposely use that word for our CFO because there is a difference. So I want to thank the board for your leadership as well. Around people and culture, we do have several positions that we continue to seek. We have done round 1 interviews and I believe round 2 interviews for one of the 4 roles. So my hope is that a subsequent future board meeting we'll bring some recommendations for board consideration. Let me jump to public engagement, and I think all of you on the board, I think the listening public and others are excited because they have seen 100% of all of our sign installations on our roadways completed and updating, reflecting GMX branding. So thank you, of course, to the team who literally made sure. I know it was a big lift. I want to publicly thank the team for that. I'll jump to what's ahead. At your December meeting, there will be several big items for board consideration. The first will be, as you know, the final audit will be presented to you from your outside auditors. I know you've had detailed conversations individually with MSL, so please look forward to that. We will have a prior briefing from the outside auditors and also from the CFO with each of you individually. We will bring a toll relief recommendation for consideration. As you know, this was already outlined in the previously approved budget by the prior governing board that you have assumed. And we'll have that recommendation along with the details for your discussion at the next meeting. And you'll see the detailed policies that we'll go over that fall under the executive. Many of them touch areas that both Raphael and I have touched, and we'll have that detailed conversation with you at your December meeting. Lastly, want to highlight this is Crash Responder Safety Week. So want to salute, of course, our road rangers and all of those who really protect and help us on all of our roadways. But also, I want to take this time, Madam Chair, I think you did this early on at the start of the meeting, was to salute all of our staff who really worked nonstop the last 48, 72 hours on headquarters. I know I've had conversations and briefings with you individually. I know Board Member Blanco, based on your background, I know you are all in the weeds on this. And I want to say I appreciate your comments, appreciate your leadership. And I know the team also appreciates the comments from you, Madam Chair, and to the board. And those are my comments. You have the full report, and I will turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. All great news. I like that. I do have to make a comment about the facility, though. This beautiful building that it's, barely 20 years old,
Yes.
that it looks good, but we have issues with windows and the roof that we have inherited. Like, we should not be talking about some of the strengthening of the windows or changing the roof so soon after it being built. I understand we have hurricane-proof windows, but we still have leaks through the windows, so we're going to have to address that soon.
100%. Madam Chair, if I could.
Yes, Mr.
And what I suspect is, and probably following this meeting, there will probably be an emergency that we may have to declare. And I know we're working on that right now based on the dollar amount and the impact to our servers that we've talked about. So I think based on now your board policy that you approved at the last board meeting, I'll get that directly to you as chair and to the treasurer, and then we'll subsequently work to make that happen.
I didn't hear any discussion or comments about the state of our IT servers, emails.
Sure. So I'm actually I would give it, but you know what? I'm gonna ask our director of total operations, who actually oversees IT and ITS. I'm gonna ask Claudio to give us a brief update. Go ahead,
Claudio?
Good morning. So yes, basically, first and foremost, I want to give kudos to the team because they were here around the clock at late at night and during the day, and even yesterday they were funneling trash bags to make sure the servers didn't get wet again. I'm happy to report that they were able to basically get everything restored the same day that the incident occurred. By noon, email was up, phone systems were up, communications were up, and slightly later that day, we never lost any sort of transactions or revenue. We have fail-safe systems in place to make sure that even if we're down, the transactions get stored at the lane level. So right now we're fully operational again. We have transactions flowing. The vendors that review the images are also receiving images. And in terms of functionality here at headquarters and at the plazas, we're fully functional. Now, we've pulled servers from different areas to make sure we hobble along. As Executive Director Tori Alston just mentioned, we will be declaring an emergency to purchase servers, replacement servers right now, and then we'll order them so we can be fully functional. We're looking at a delivery date of December 6th right now for a full replacement. And we've done the calculations and we feel confident that we can operate as we are right now until we get the full replacement and full functionality of everything.
Do we have the servers here internally? Do we have backups in the cloud? How does it work?
Okay, so unfortunately, the way the water infiltrated the building, it unfortunately affected the primary and secondary servers, the backup basically. In terms of storage, we have offsite storage, so we won't lose data. But in terms of operationally, it's basically the gateway where we can communicate to everything. Those were affected. They were able to restore some of them, 5 out of the 8. They were restored. And so there is also a disaster recovery plan that's in place. We had it in place. We're waiting to hire certain folks to finalize that plan. So we're confident that by the end of next year, we'll have basically another hot site. So if something happens in this building, we can continue operating as normal. Right now, that's not fully executed. Basically, it's just storage that we have outside of the building.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
The hot site discussion, is that recently or is that something?
No, that's something that was already ongoing. Unfortunately,
okay.
the person that was leading that effort left the agency.
Okay.
And so we are in the process of replacing that position, and then that project will continue along.
All right, thank you.
And in terms of the cost for the executive, for the emergency, basically we'll be purchasing the servers now so we can make sure we can get everything back up and running, and then we'll file the proper claims through the insurance company. And we're looking at roughly $266,000, and the policy is above $1 million, so we're okay.
Thank you.
One quick question. Does any of the data that is required to bring everything 100% operational on new equipment, is that data here, or is that something that needs to be recovered from offsite?
No, it's here. Good. Our storage wasn't affected, thankfully.
Okay.
One more comment just for
Yes,
clarification.
board member Pages.
Yeah. There's no revenue data. I want to clarify this for the public. I want to make sure. We're talking internal emails, we're talking internal stuff, right? But there was no impact to our, let's just call them revenue servers.
That's correct.
Okay,
So
thank you.
even if we were down, there's capacity at the lane level because we have servers and plazas out in the field that they can hold data for a certain amount of time until we come back online. Basically here, the transactions come here and then they get sent over to the centralized back office.
All right, I think it's important to clarify that. Thank you.
I have one more
Sure.
one
Board
question.
member Perez.
Director Torrey, regarding, I know you're putting all the key roles together regarding the director or manager of communications and marketing. do we still I know you did away with the legislative lobbying. Do we still have the communications contract in place?
Through the chair.
Yes, Mr. Austin.
So yes, we do have several communication sub-consultants that work under our GECs. Separately from that, there are different areas that we've identified that should be core services inside the organization. So once we bring on this communications professional, my intent, as I've shared, is that we believe that some of those services that we have outsourced can now be provided in-house by a full-time professional.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, do you have a general idea what the savings would be on that?
I have an idea,
Okay.
but as a follow-up, I'll get it to you and
Okay.
the full board. Yes.
All right. Awesome.
I do
Thank
know the
you.
number very well.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Are we talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands?
More to come, Madam Chair.
You know, I'm not very patient. So next on the agenda are informational items. The procurement has been provided to the board and requires no action today. Are there any questions on the procurement report? No questions? Comments?
Not on the procurement report, but I would like to indulge through the chair if we can
Absolutely.
move to a different item that may not have been on the agenda right now. If we can excuse Tori, it's a matter that deals with the executive director,
Okay,
if you allow.
absolutely.
All right, so at the last board meeting, we approved the interim director's executive compensation plan. And I came into that meeting with a document that was pre-negotiated, and that was a number. And then there was discussion on the board for a 320 number, a lower figure. But we ended up at a 350 number. But when I asked I guess it was the HR person at the time and some other people that were here, for benchmarking, we were quite limited on the benchmarking data. And I value everyone's opinion on this board. I mean, we're all here as professionals and know exactly what you guys are doing. I went back immediately that evening or maybe the morning after and asked Tori for benchmarking information. I mean, the stuff that I'm kind of used to on the private sector, I want to understand what it is that executive directors are making around the state in a much more methodical way. It took a while to get that data, but we have the data. I have the data. I was able to see it. And I have had lengthy conversations with Tori. Tori likes to lead from the top, and Tori understands the matter that we're discussing as far as compensation and setting new benchmarks and new numbers for state executive directors. I've also had discussions with other executive directors at other agencies to understand what their compensation is. So I would like this board to reconsider the compensation for Tori. And to Board Member Miller's position, I would like to bring it to 320, which is the number I think is the right number. Is the right number that Board?
I believe
no?
I
Right.
proposed
And so
that
did
number,
you.
yeah.
Well, both of you guys did, yes, that's true. The chair, and then supported by Board Member Miller, that's right. So I'm proposing that we do that.
But
Tori is fine with the matter.
we signed a contract with him, so we have a contractual number. I mean, he doesn't have to agree to a reduction in salary.
He wants to agree to the difference, believe it or not, because he wants to show the leadership that comes with doing the right thing and setting the right numbers and setting the right tone on fiscal responsibility. So I propose that we reset it to 320, and that obviously he has to want to sign it, but my understanding is that he will.
So you have spoken with him
I
about
have.
it?
I have.
Board Member Perez?
Yeah, and we're just talking about the salary figure, nothing else, no other benefits that
Just
were
the
part of the
salary figure.
contract.
That's the salary figure. And let me be very clear on this. This has nothing to do with Tori's performance. Tori has done a spectacular job during this transition, during this process. And if it was me, I'd pay him much more. But I think we need to be fiscally responsible. I think we need to be, I don't want this agency to now set new standards for executive directors' compensation inflation throughout the state. I think we have a responsibility not only to this county, but to the state in general. So I'm comfortable now that we have real data and real benchmarking, that the right number is the 320 number that was proposed by the chair originally.
Thank you, board member, sorry, through the chair. Thank you, board member Pages, because I think that sets also a precedent as we were talking about.
Correct.
What are we doing next? So
Correct.
now that we have the data, and probably should have had it before, but now we are where we are, so it's going to help us determine moving forward. So thank you.
So are you making a motion?
I make a motion that we reset the interim director salary to 320 moving forward. I don't want to go retroactive on this, but moving forward on whatever time it takes to make those adjustments on his compensation, and obviously get him to sign a new agreement.
Is there a second
I second.
discussion? Yes.
I
Board Member
appreciate
Miller.
the additional review and thoughtfulness in that it is important that we align ourselves with like entities throughout the state and ensure that we're being fiscally responsible, and I appreciate that.
So, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Motion passes. So, we need to get Tori back here. So moving on to announcements, our next board meeting is December 13th at 9 a.m. Board members, are there any questions, announcements, staff direction, or final comments from board members before we adjourn? Oh, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Hearing no additional comments, I adjourn this meeting at 10:37 a.m. Thank you, board members, for your time this morning. This meeting is adjourned.